Hello, so I'm Eric. I am the branding director at ArtSpeak Creative, where we help life changers reach people. And we help them by navigating kind of the tools of today and the landscape of today with branding, with messaging, with web, and marketing. So, and all kinds of other good stuff. So I'm here today with Danny Parmelee. Danny, it's awesome to talk to you. Danny is Vice President of Church Planning at Converge Mid-America, creator at Rev Coach, and podcaster at 101 Questions Church Planners Ask. Family man as well, disciple. So man, you got a lot going on.
A lot of titles there. So
yes, titles. So what of kind of the things that I've kind of listed there? What does it look like for, if you could just give like a summary statement of what it is that you do?
Yeah.
For us.
Well, my main job, the job that puts bread on the table, and what I spend a majority of my time doing is I do oversee church planting for Converge Mid-America, which is Michigan all the way down to the Caribbean. So 13 states, I think 26 different countries. And I definitely do have like the coolest job that anyone could imagine. I just travel around and help church planters launch healthy churches. So being a church planter myself, it's kind of a dream to be able to do what I do now, let people learn from the mistakes I made, and of course to learn from some of the things that went well and worked well as a church planter.
Awesome. Yeah, well, we love church planters. We've got the chance to help a lot of them, partner with them in ministry with what we do. So let's unpack that a little bit more. I guess I'm curious, since it's affecting all of us with the pandemic and everything, how are you affected by that with what you do? And in the midst of that, what are you seeing God doing that's noteworthy?
Yeah, well, I remember when everything kind of happened with COVID. So my family and I, we were in Destin, Florida. I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and everybody from Nashville just goes down to Destin. That's kind of the place to go. So we thought, we're just going to follow everybody else and go down there as well. And I remember watching, the COVID counts, and they were like, you went to bed at 1,000, and then you woke up in the morning, it was 1,500, and that it seemed astronomical at the moment. And then they kind of came out and said, all right, there's quarantine, things are getting shut down. So literally we're on family vacation. The beach is shut down. The hotel stopped serving food. And I remember looking over at my wife and I said, okay, two different things. I said, number one, I'm so thankful I'm not a lead pastor or church planter right now, because that just must be horrible having to try to decide, do you have services? Don't you, what's this going to look like? Yeah. And then the second thing is I said, I may need to find a different job. My whole job is, how do you gather people into the largest group as possible so that you can launch a church? And so I thought, maybe I need to check out Home Depot. Would love to work at Home Depot someday. So it just might be a little bit I was thinking of doing that in retirement, but maybe this is accelerated. So now here's the thing, is that over time, one of the most amazing things happened is that our church planters were able to pivot and innovate. And it's one of the advantages of church plants, is that because there's less structure in place, you can move a lot quicker, and you also just have a little bit more freedom to try new things. And so our church planters did that. They adapted quickly. And this is even church planters who moved on site to a brand new place, didn't know people. They didn't have a group of people even to start with. So it seemed really weird to go, okay, now we're going to start having online meetings with people that we never knew. Like, normally you could throw a party in the park and invite some people, or meet up at a restaurant. But it was absolutely amazing to see that the way that they were innovating and, pivoting the way that they needed to do. And we had churches that launched digitally in the midst of the pandemic, and now are starting to meet physically. And, so it was really, really great. Also, just the church plant that I'm involved in, they went online right away. Yeah. And when they eventually opened up to have their physical services, they had 41 new people that first Sunday back that had never visited before. And so they had only seen it online. So they had been watching
Wow.
only online. And for a lot of the church planners that had, you know what, we weren't going to do online services for maybe another year or two because it takes so much time and energy, and does it really matter?
Yeah, it
And they
does.
realized, wow, we had the opportunity to reach more people this way and, you know, introduce them to Christ than before in the other old model, if you will.
Wow. Well, that's really cool to hear that, you know, despite or through that turmoil, that the church planters and church plants are still, you know, at the forefront of the advancement of the kingdom.
Yep.
And God knows, and He's right there with you and everybody involved. So that's
Absolutely.
very cool to hear. Looking back, kind of zooming out a little bit, for you, what was kind of a pivotal moment on your ministry journey?
Yeah.
If you could bring us into that.
Yeah, I think, well, there was a lot of kind of markers in kind of the growth of the church in Milwaukee, which which you were kind of a part of, and we
Oh, yeah.
started out. I was 26 years old, and
Yeah.
we had only young marrieds, no kids, young professional singles, and college students. They made up our entire church except for one brave family that we had. So we didn't have children's ministry. We were just like this ragtag group of young professionals kind of meeting, and originally on Saturday nights and then switched to Sunday nights. That was really cool because we were doing stuff that was different than anybody else. It had a totally different feel, different vibe, but it also was a bit limiting because then people saw it, oh, that's just like the college ministry or an extension. It's not even a real church. It's just this like group of college students. So for us, when we ended up, so 5 years in, when we ended up buying the building that we were renting from an old Presbyterian church, that was one of those big markers. And we know that the church is not a building, the church is the people. However, that signaled to the community that we were more than just a ministry that was renting, and that kind of allowed us then even to move just from Sunday evenings to Sunday mornings as well, which again, there's nothing more spiritual about a Sunday morning service, but because cultural expectation says a church meets Sunday morning, it really did even allow us to reach non-believers, because even if they didn't go to church, they knew church is Sunday morning in a building.
Yeah.
So we, as church planners, we always are trying to innovate and do things differently. And yet at the same time, it always has to be held in balance with cultural expectation.
I love that. Can you expand on that some more? So, looking at kind of the landscape, I would love to hear your take on what is the same and what is different for fulfilling the Great Commission, for this time, for this season.
Yeah. So exactly that. So what I think, even what COVID and the pandemic has done, is has now broken cultural expectations. So if 8 months ago you would have said, Danny, I've got a plan, I'm going to do kind of like a house church movement. I've heard it's worked in China. It's worked in Africa. It's worked here. It's worked there. I'd say, you know what, you can do it. And people have tried it in the United States, but there's still just a cultural expectation that church is Sunday morning in a building. You show up, you come once a week. That is what church is. Anything else and outside of that is cultish. It's suspect. It's whatever. So what happened now is because what became the norm is that there is no norm.
Oh, wow.
So now even I would say, if someone came to you and said, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. We're going to meet together as a big group on the first Tuesday of the month. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have small groups in our homes. And once a month on Saturdays, we'll get together for worship. I'd say, tell me more. Whereas before I would say, no way, not going to happen. You're a ministry, you're a training center, but you're not a church. Where now culture says, hey, you know what? I did this thing where for weeks, I never went into a building. It didn't necessarily happen on Sunday, because then people realized they were watching their pastor preach a message on a Tuesday or whatever, and it still it still had the same power to it. It didn't have to happen on Sunday. And so that's why I'm just saying that because cultural expectation broke, then that has now allowed, I think church in general to take some different forms and some different shapes.
Wow. So now you're taking it to a different level where the question is kind of geared toward how do we sort of brace ourselves and handle the shifting tides? What I'm hearing you saying is this is a new opportunity. This is something huge opportunity for the church, and that's super exciting.
Yeah. Yep. And of course, there's still going to be majority of people that, will still probably see church on Sunday morning and in a building. But because you have more than, you're going to have the early adapters who now are going to start doing things different. And that will, I think, draw the church into something new.
Well, awesome. Well, let's do it. Let's do something new and old. So what do you think? What other, I guess, limiting beliefs might be unnecessarily holding church planters back right now?
Holding church planters back?
Yeah.
I think, there still is somewhat of a fear or a cultural expectation of full-time and a limit by geography. So by that, I mean that it's like, okay, if you're the pastor of the church, that's what you do full-time. You don't have a job outside of that. And the only people that really you can reach are those that you would have geographical proximity to, that you could get to within 10 to 15 minutes. So again, now there can be dangers in it, but within the digital church, you could literally disciple people from afar, even if they're not close to you geographically. And also there's an opportunity then that pastors, or even those that are currently in a vocation, wouldn't have to quit their jobs to be considered a legitimate pastor. So let's say you're a banker, you work at a bank, but you have a heart for the gospel. You now could say, you know what, I'm going to take some of my time at night to prepare messages, to disciple people. And it's always going to be about training up other training up other people, which is what it's supposed to be anyways. And so if you're training up other people that are also carving out some of their time, you'd be able to do that. Now, maybe you wouldn't draw a paycheck from it, or a significant paycheck from it, because some of the systems are going to be a little bit different, but you're able to do ministry less expensive than having a multi-million-dollar building that you're heating and cooling all week, that you're maintaining, and all those other things. So,
yeah. Well, what kinds of, what are pastors doing? What are they drawing their paychecks from that you're seeing work really well as they pair that with ministry life?
Yeah. So I don't know if there's a specific, occupation, but the biggest thing is that you have to be able to have flexibility. The harder thing is that if you have a job where it's like you can never take off, you can never, do any of those things, that's where it becomes, just too much. So I'm just, just even as an example, and I think like the classic or the stereotypical one is, someone working at Starbucks. It's a pastor that, all right, I get my insurance and paycheck from Starbucks. I work a couple shifts here, but then I do my other stuff kind of from the church, which again, that works, but I think it works not because it's coffee or because it's Starbucks. It's because it has some of that built-in kind of flexibility to be able to do stuff. And you have to have a job where they understand what you're doing and that they're okay with that, so that you might say, hey, I'm going to work a few less hours here. I'll work twice as much the next week, or I'll work twice as much this next day, to be able to do that. So
yeah, flexibility, that's huge. What are you seeing working in the hard places to do ministry?
What do you mean by a hard place?
This question is coming from Kirk, one of the co-owners of ArtSpeak. He's interested in he loves helping churches that are in the Bible Belt, or places where culturally there's an expectation of church is good, but there's a lot of places in this country and beyond where that's not the case, and that's kind of what we mean by the hard places is.
So like a Northeast, would you say like Northeast?
Northeast,
yeah,
absolutely, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of things that are important are that you are actually from. So we'll use the Northeast as an example because I run into this a lot, and there's a lot of people who recognize the need, and as church planners, they're drawn to that. So literally, even just right before this call, it was a church planner that I was helping coach that was from Alabama and had a heart to plant in the Northeast. Okay. And his accent was very thick. You knew he was from Alabama. I said, you know what? You love Jesus and you can go there. And no matter how good your heart is, it is going to take you 20 years before anyone's even going to listen to you. I'm not saying that's right, but you know what I mean? Again, this so much stuff it comes down to culture. I'm not saying it's right, but you are considered suspect. You are an outsider. So it doesn't matter what your message is, you're an outsider. So the more that people can come from within in those hard places, and then there is the cultural awareness that happens. And here's what I mean by that. Like the person that's from the Northeast gets the systems, they understand the culture, and so they're able to break through a little bit more with things. And there just has to be a very, very high level of authenticity. So for example, yes, if you're planting in New York, which is a very difficult area, you better know the language. You better probably be speaking more intellectually compared to some other hard place. Let's say there's another hard place and it's urban poor. Then you better be able to live urban poor and to speak that language and to know the experience when someone says, I've run out of, food stamps. You know what I mean? And so again, having that cultural sensitivity to be able to do it. So.
Okay. Yeah.
It has less to do with resource. Most people think it's a resource issue. In other words, like, I don't have enough money to plant in the poor. I don't have enough money to plant in the Northeast, or if we just gave more money or more people. But I think it has more to do with that cultural awareness.
Yeah. Well, I guess speaking of money, what do you have to say about fundraising? Anything?
Yeah. So this may sound weird, but I'm passionate about fundraising. And part of that came out of my own experience. I really surrendered my life to Christ in college and got involved with Crew on campus. And so I had a great experience with that and did some summer projects and kind of learned some of the basic values of raising financial support, asking people to kind of partner with. So then when I became a church planner, I was able to utilize a lot of that. If you are in ministry, you are a fundraiser till the day you die. It's not just something that happens when you're a church planner. It will look different. So in the beginning, you're raising funds, you're asking individuals to join. But if you are raising or you have 1,000-person church, God is always going to be calling you to something more as a church. And to do that, you're casting vision and you're inviting people to be part of it. So I tell church planners, they're like, I don't really want to raise support. I kind of want to just like get over that. It's like, there's no getting over it. You will always have more to do, and you're inviting people to participate in that mission. It's not just, raise this money for this one little project and then it's over.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I guess I love that bigger picture perspective on fundraising. Are there any more kind of details we can draw out from that?
Yeah. Idea? So, and I don't know how much this pertains to all the listeners, but for our church planters, they raise about $250,000 to $300,000. So when I say that to a church planter, like, hey, I'm really interested in church planning, what does that look like? And I tell them they need to raise $250,000 to $300,000. Their face turns white. I have to get out, sometimes the heart, the electrodes to kind of jumpstart, like, wake up. And it seems just crazy. But what that actually is that it is them finding between 65 and 70 people to give on average, $50 to $100 a month for a 3 to 4 year period. So
Okay.
when it's broken down like that, it's like, hey, do you think that you could find 60 to 70 people that would give a monthly gift? And yeah, some are going to give 10 to 15, $20, but you're going to have others that will, join on for $250 a month. Or you might have a church that, does something and gives $500 a month. But just kind of that average thing, it's like, oh, that's so much more attainable to think 70 people at $75 a month, over a 4-year period. So,
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
and it's
that.
all
I think that's
about
helpful to
vision.
somebody for sure.
It's all about vision and not need. So when you're inviting people to join with you for ministry, it's not, hey, I'm doing this thing, I don't have enough money, can you
Not
give
a
me
charity
some of
case
yours
or something. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. I love that. Yeah. Partnering together, advancing the kingdom. Let's do it. So you've shared a lot about the agility of church planners, especially through what we've experienced with COVID. Shared a lot of big picture ideas with things. In addition, what else about the next wave would you want to say? That was another question that we brought in was. I'm not sure what the next wave all means yet, but looking ahead into the near future and the landscape, what does that look like, do you think?
Yeah. Some of this deals with what I mentioned before, and some of it is just, I would say, the nature of our times is that the more organic and less structural, I think there is going to be more of an appeal. And it's so weird to hear that even come out of my mouth, because I'm all about structure and systems. That's how I planted.
That's how I'm wired too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like I would hear, there was a book that came out when I was planting called Organic Church. And I used to make fun of it all the time. I said, organic, the only thing that's organic is cancer. That's what grows really well and really fast. But I say that because even in our political climate right now, things are so divided. And because the church is connected to even a political party, your Gen Y, your Gen Z is kind of like repulsing that and saying anything that's connected to politics or a governmental structure, it just seems not as real and authentic. So I think that in this next wave, if that's what you want to call it, that there is going to be growth, and those that are, kind of don't resemble and mimic as much what we've seen in the past, which is based off of so much structure and order and all of that. So,
wow, that
maybe a
that
bit
resonates.
maybe a bit more of a return to like the 60s Jesus hippie church type of thing. So
Yeah, perfect. Okay, you heard it here first, folks.
yes.
Hippie church. I love that, because that resonates with what I believe. Something that's resonating for me right now, which is cultivate. This word cultivate. I tend to be a striver. I tend to be somebody who, when I have a vision, I want to like try to force it to happen and drive hard at things, and then create the systems, the structures to make it happen. But really, just this idea of looking at your stewardship and cultivating what is in your stewardship is more kind of an organic kind of picture of what that can look like. And to me, that has a lot more to do with faith than what my personal bent is. Because with cultivation, there's a waiting. I only have this much time for this, but what's the best thing I can do for this right now? What's the best thing I can do next? So I love what you're saying with that. So anything else that you have to say to the ministry leaders out there, entrepreneurs, pastors, ministry leaders?
Now is the best time to take all the risks. Okay. Because here's why. Let's say you try something crazy, you get to blame COVID. So it doesn't matter. It could be you making the stupidest, riskiest decision, and you go, oh yeah, that was 2020. Everyone's you don't even have to say it. They'll just respond, oh yeah, COVID is the reason that your business shut down, wasn't it? Or COVID is the reason that your ministry or your church shut down. And you can just, I know this is total flesh that I am like promoting right now, but at the same time, there's part of me that's like, just want to fan that flame of risk, because we are in a time where you can do that, take the risk now. If it doesn't work, man, you just, it's not as, the pressure isn't as much as it was, a year ago, where it's like, oh, you're starting your own business and it failed. It's like, well, wow, what did you do wrong with it? Type of thing. So.
Yeah. Oh man, that's a great answer. That makes me think of just kind of the feeling I'm getting with when the market is like closing in and pinching pennies and scared. Mm-hmm. I get the sense that God is saying, push, advance, like now is not the time to do what the market is doing. Just expand, grow. And now's your time. So now's your time. Now's our time. Let's do it. Okay. Well, so I guess where on the internet can listeners find you to keep track of what you're doing?
Yeah, the easiest is churchplantersask.com. That's the blog, but also has all the links for podcasting stuff. Have my personal information there as well. I'm busy, but I'm accessible as well too. If there's listeners out there that are considering church planting or are church planters and don't have coaching or a tribe to connect with, I can try to help point them in the right direction to do that. I do believe that this is a time more than ever where, as pastors, we need ministry partners to walk alongside of us, to encourage us, to hold us accountable. And we've all seen over the last couple of years just so many church pastors and planters failing out of ministry or quitting, flaming out, just all sorts of different things. And so being able to do that together with a group is really important. Yeah.
Hey, we need to do it together. We need each other. Love that. Very cool. Well, Danny, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for sharing things from your perspective. It's a very valuable perspective, and I think it'll help a lot of people out there. So appreciate you, brother. And until next time.